I'm the director of the Center for Entrepreneurial Studies, and I'm delighted that you all came out to help us kick off our WSU Business Plan Competition Resource Night Speaker Series. This is the official kickoff for the 16th Annual Business Plan Competition this year. And we're excited so many of you are involved and that you come from a diverse group of majors and interests all across campus. It's the vision of the Center for Entrepreneurial Studies to open the world of entrepreneurial opportunity to greater numbers of faculty and students all across campus by being an active coordinator of the entrepreneurship ecosystem. So what that means for you is that we're trying to help you know that you can come to one place, whether that's our website or soon to one physical facility in the Commons building where you can get resources to help you move your idea toward impact, whether that's doing research or that's ultimately launching a venture out of the project that you're working on here. So we're excited to have you here tonight, and I'm going to turn the mic over to Allison Sellers, who is our new student venture manager, and she is going to be in charge of helping us coordinate all these resource nights and moving you forward through the business plan competition. So here's Allison to introduce our speaker.
That's her, definitely her. I don't have enough to say to stay here the whole time. So as Marie said, I'm Allison Sellers. I'm the student venture manager, just joined the center. Really glad to have you all here. This is an amazing turnout. Thank you for joining us on this first resource night of 2018. For those of you, just a quick announcement, just for those of you who are doing the business plan competition, registration is open as of today. So go to our website or our webpage. It's underneath news and events on the Carson College of Business site. And you can review the criteria, get your team together, and go ahead and sign up. We also, if you want more announcements, more reminders about things coming up, keep an eye on our social media, our Twitter and Instagram. You can find us at WSU_CES or our Facebook at WSU CES. So thank you all very much again for coming, and thank you, Diane Freeman, for coming. Diane comes to us from Voyager Capital. Excuse me, my apologies. Yeah, I'm in awe is what I am right now. It's like star power is what it is. So Diane's a partner at Voyager Capital, focuses on software and digital media investments in the Pacific Northwest. She has over 30 years of tech company experience in leading marketing, strategy, and business development. She works with startups in the enterprise software, internet, mobile, social, and security software industries across the West Coast. Thank you again, Diane, for coming. We're really glad to have you.
Hello. Hello. This is unbelievable. So here's how we're going to play this, because from experience of dealing with other groups like yourself, I have found this conversation could go anywhere. And so I am happy for it to go anywhere as long as you get benefit from it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am, what I do, high level how I do it. And then two things are going to happen. You're either going to look at me cross-eyed and not understand anything I just said to you, and in which case we'll dig into that, or you're going to understand everything I said to you, and we're going to see where you want to go with it. Okay, that makes sense? So that means that, right, business competition, you know, how many people here hope one day to raise money from somebody? Yeah, okay. So that means you're going to come to me, or the virtual me. So truly take advantage of talking to me here now to figure out what this all means, okay? So that's the deal. I'm not going to sit here and just present, right? Okay. So I'm Diane Freeman. I do live in Portland. I'm with Voyager Capital. We're a regional VC firm out of Seattle. We're in Seattle and Portland. We'll soon be in Vancouver, BC. We had an office in Menlo Park, California, on Sand Hill Road, the world of venture capital. We're getting out of California because the math in California is different than the math in the Pacific Northwest, and we're going to discuss that a little bit, i.e. the amount of money that it takes to basically build a company in Oregon and Washington is a lot less than the amount of money that it takes to build a company in California, so why waste our money in California? We do B2B software investing. We do first institutional rounds. That means we come in after the angels. We come in, we don't do notes. We do a priced round. We always take a board seat. and I spend a lot of time with entrepreneurs like yourself figuring out how you go to market. Why? Because build it and they will come is a really bad strategy. Okay, so keep that in mind because we'll discuss why that's the case. So we spend a lot of time with that first money that we put into these opportunities with usually first-time entrepreneurs, first-time CEOs, in figuring out how to get you to those first beachheads, those first milestones, those first customers, that first version of the product, to those first referenceable accounts, so then you can go get more money, right? Because this is a cycle that goes on in getting this money. My background is I'm from New York. I went to Vanderbilt University. I was a biomedical engineer. I thought I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon. I went to Portland for a summer job. I fell in love with the Northwest. I took a job up at OHSU thinking that I'd take a year off. Someone called me and said, you can make $18,000 a year. And I said, count me in. So I changed my career that I went to school for to selling computers. And I then proceeded to spend 27 years with a number of companies, most of them very large public companies, a couple of venture-backed startups, basically in sales, marketing, business development. And I did that all over the world. I ended up back in the Northwest where I wanted to be, ended up back ultimately in Portland after selling a company in the Bay Area that was an internet security company. It was an Israeli-backed company from Sequoia Capital in the Bay Area. Sold that, moved back to Portland, and basically said, I am done. I don't like technology. I don't like VCs. I don't like the people who are doing it. I am done. I want to do Pilates and watch the Food Channel. That scared my husband to death. I was serious about it. What I didn't know that I was done with at the time was I had 27 years of managing people, managing budgets, managing products. I was done with the operational side. But what I still loved was technology. What I still loved was being able to get in there and basically build things and help other people build things. And what I really love is Portland, Oregon. And so from the standpoint of doing it in a place I really like a lot, this is a great match for me. So what happened was Voyager found me, and they said, hey, you want to go look at some deals with us? I said, I don't know what that means. They said, well, you know, let's just go see if there's some entrepreneurs with some great ideas. I said, great. And over about a year, we dated each other. And there are three things that happened in 2007. The first thing that happened is we found actually that there's some really great entrepreneurs in Oregon. Oregon was always considered a flyover. It was sort of the Bay Area and Seattle. That was the first thing. Second thing, we started going out raising Fund 3. We are now raising Fund 5. Now again, some of you are looking at me like, what the hell is she talking about? So we will break this all down. We are raising Fund 3, now we're raising Fund 5. And when we raised Fund 3, we had some limited partners in Oregon that said, we're going to give Voyager money so that you can invest in other people. And with that, we opened up an office in Portland, and that's when I joined. And the third thing that happened was that we made an investment, a very good investment, in a company called Elemental Technologies. And Elemental Technologies at the time, when we first talked to them, and this was Sam Blackman and a couple of his co-founders that basically came out of Pixelworks, which was another startup in Portland. When he first came out of that company, they said, we're going to build a chip that's going to do over-the-top video distribution and transmission. And we said, we don't do chips, because what do? We do B2B software. We said, if you ever can get this into software, come back to us. In 2007, at the same time that we raised Fund 3, and we opened the office when I came on formally, Sam came back and said, guess what? We can solve the problem in software. And we said, great. We're going to write you a check and make some money. So in 2007, my world changed, and I became a venture capitalist. Okay, so now I'm going to stop there. Does any of that make any sense to any of you? B2B software, yes? B2B, business to business, not business to consumer. Why B2B? Why do we like B2B? Right? Somewhat because that's where our experience is as a firm. I spent most of my career selling to large enterprises. But the cost of selling to consumers is very different than to selling to enterprises, right? So if I want all of you in this room to buy something from me, the marketing dollars that I have to spend, the types of things I have to build, the way that I have to build my organization so that all of you know about this one product is very different in terms of what it's going to cost than if I try to go sell it to some business over there. Totally different roadmap, totally different product, totally different go-to-market. So we sell B2B, number one. Number two, we do this with a series of funds of people. We're just managing other people's money, basically. We're an asset class like any other asset class. So we go, in fact, right now we're raising Fund 5, and we go out and we basically ask people for money. Just like all of you here in this room say, you want to ask me for money. And what do we tell them? What we tell them is that we're basically going to raise this fund that's in essence going to spend it on you. And we're going to spend it on you because we're going to spend it on B2B software, first institutional rounds, priced rounds. We always take a board seat. And why? Because it's all about the money, that we know how to basically make your idea, your company, get to the next stage of valuation so that you can go raise more money and we can all make money in the end. And yes, you can all build a beautiful product and save lives and do everything else, but let's just be clear, as the VC standing here, it is all about money. Okay? So we can all have the social consciousness of things we want to do and people we want to save, and I want to do that too. But when you sit there standing talking to me, or you sit there building a company and you're going to want to have to find money, it is all about the money. Right? There are other people who will fund your businesses for lifestyle, and there are other people who will fund your businesses for lots of reasons. But for me, you come to me, we all want to make money. So we're going to look for opportunities that are very disruptive, and they can either be technology disruption or business disruption. So what's a technology disruption? A technology disruption is when Sam said, we can basically solve a problem that has always been done in hardware. You have every single video company has always solved the problem of distribution with a chip or in a box with a computer. We can solve it in software. Major breakthrough, technology disruption. What's a business disruption? In all honesty, anything that's SaaS right now is a business disruption. Anything that used to be priced on-premise in a business that you can now do in the cloud, it's a business disruption. Why? Because it changes the pricing model. So what a large enterprise used to spend $500,000 on, they can now spend $100,000 on and in fact pay for it in a very different way. That's a business disruption. So we're looking for very disruptive solutions in very, very large markets, which is one of the reasons why you always get asked this question about what's the TAM? What's the total available market? Why? Because it really doesn't take a whole lot of sense to put a lot of money into something where the market's really small. Again, it's all about the money. We want very large markets. We want you to know that you're in a very large market. We want you to understand what that large market is. So, disruptive in a large market. And the third is we want a really great team. Now, out of those three things, what's the most important thing? Third. Everyone agree? Anyone disagree? Okay. So the way to the money is through the people, right? So when I spend my day, what do I do all day? I sit with people like yourself, literally, and I have you sit and pitch me your idea. I date you. I date you over coffee, usually first, and we sit and we get to know each other. And it's going to be just like this. I'm going to sit and say, hey, what's your name? What you do? Where are you from? What's your idea? What are you doing? And you're going to basically come back to me, and you're either going to be able to explain to me what you're doing, or you are just going to keep talking until you think you've said something. Honestly. Second thing that's going to happen is you're either going to sit there and say to me, here's why I believe this is going to work, and here's how I'm going to do it. And you're going to start to do two things. You're either going to start saying to me, I can solve it, I can build it, I can do it, I can answer it, I. Bad. Bad, right? So what am I doing in those first, by the way, unfortunately, those first 2 minutes, I think I've gotten a little better. The first 5 minutes, I've tried to at least give it a little more time than 2 minutes. The first 5 minutes, I'm just basically, unfortunately, I'm observing and I am making a judgment immediately. Is it a market? Is it an opportunity? But most importantly, unfortunately, do I think that you can do this? I don't even care about the technology. In all honesty, the technology is the easiest part because it either works or it doesn't work, right? You either build the autonomous lawnmower and it works, or it doesn't work. The bigger issue is, once you built it, do you know how to extract dollars from wallets from somebody to get it? And do you have a team that you've put together that basically can do that, right? Because the team that's going to do it isn't going to be all the engineers. The team that does it isn't going to be all the finance people. The team that does it isn't going to be all the marketeers or the salespeople, right? The team that does it is the team that understands how to build it, how to extract market requirements from the targeted customer, knows how to market it, knows how to sell it, right? So the team that knows how to do it. And so when I first talk to you, you probably are a team of 1 or 2 or 3. I mean, maybe, and it's you and the engineers. In my world, it's all software, right? So you're like, I got a few engineers and they're part-time and I got 2 on payroll and, right? But I'm sitting with you. So I'm watching how you tell me your story. Now, if we get through that, right, then we continue the dating. And from there, the way the dating is basically going to go is we're going to spend time together. I'm going to learn more about you. I'm going to dive in with you more on the market. Again, I'm not even looking at the technology yet. You're going to tell me what it is that you're building. We're going to talk a bit about how you're doing it. But truly, the last thing that I'm going to dive into is the product. I want to know the market. I want to know who else is in the market. I want to know how you think you're going to get the product to market. I want to know where you think the road bumps are going to be. I want to know, how do you process information? I want to know, when you hit the wall and it doesn't work, are you going to keep throwing yourself up against the wall trying to make it stick? Or do you understand at what point do you stop and adjust? The old pivot word. You hear people talk about pivots? Yeah. So pivots are good. Pivots are fine. The problem is if you don't recognize when you should pivot, right? So I'm going to see how you process that information, right? So we're going to sit there and we're going to talk about, is it disruptive? We're going to talk about the size of the market, and then we're going to talk about you and your team. And if we can get through that, then at some point we'll start talking about how much money you think you need to raise. Okay, so now I'm going to stop there. Any questions? Yeah.
Why did you choose Wazoo?
Say that again?
Why did you choose Wazoo?
To come here? Because I was invited. Happy to be here. Any other question? Yeah.
What's Fund 3 and Fund 5?
So Fund 3 and Fund 5. So the way that VCs work is we raise funds. And so Fund 1, Fund 2, Fund 3, Fund 4. And what we do is we go out to what we call limited partners. And a limited partner can be anything from a high net worth individual, i.e. a very rich person, to a university endowment, to a family foundation, to a fund of funds. It can be any asset class that basically sees venture capital as an asset class. Now, as an asset class, right, we basically are different than the stock market. We're basically different than T-bills. We're different. We basically are in essence, 10-year investment that you're going to make. And, you know, we'll get back to California. If you're talking to the California folks, they're going to sit and say, we're going to make you 10x your money, right? We're going to, for every $100,000 you write me a check for, we're going to make you $1 million, right? So it's a bunch of bullshit. The majority of the investments made, right, the majority maybe are 1x. The key on this is, can you consistently get a return, right? Can you consistently and repeatedly deliver back to your investors who wrote you a check a return? And for us, what we have consistently and repeatedly shown is that we've gotten somewhere between 2 to 3x on money that our limited partners have given us. Now, why is that important? Because if you're investing in the folks in the Bay Area, and forget the Sequoias and the NEAs and there's about 3 of them, the Kleiners, right? For every we got an Uber, we got an Airbnb, we got a whatever, which, by the way, only make money at the point where they exit, right? Right now, it's all on paper, right? For every one of those, there are hundreds that never make it. Hundreds and hundreds that dollars have been put in and no return has come. So the reason that our limited partners like us is that if you look at our record, we basically have consistently and repeatedly delivered back 2 to 3x. Now, we do that every 5 to 6 years, depending on the economic cycle, of raising a new fund. So what I said was, I came on when they were raising Fund 3. On average, our fund sizes are $100 million. So back in 2007, we raised Fund 3. We raised $100 million from an assortment of limited partners, types of folks that I just talked about, and then we spend their money. And we hopefully give them a return on that money. And as we get close to running out of that money, we go raise another fund, right? And then we go raise another fund. So we're raising Fund 5 right now. So we're correct. We're raising the 5th fund now. It's a $100 million fund. We're about halfway through on commitments of that $100 million fund. And we will then go spend that for the next 5+ years. Yeah?
Essentially the middleman.
Yeah, essentially, the question was, you're essentially the middleman. I mean, it's a really interesting way of thinking about it. We are essentially the middleman. I mean, the people who invest in us, for the most part, don't want to do direct investments. Why? They don't have access to the deal flow, right? I mean, what they're betting on with us is deal flow, right? So what they want to know is that I've got enough deals that I'm looking at to make a good decision on the right deal to make. So I look at 120 to 130 deals a year, almost all in Oregon, and I do 1 or 2. Statistically, that is what it is. I mean, you could talk to the folks in the Bay Area, and the number may say statistically, it's 1 to 2% of the deals seen, right? So now, what happened to the other 100 and whatever number? Well, some of them are really stupid, right? I mean, some of them, the baby just is not pretty, and you just have to take the entrepreneur out of their misery. Some of them are out of scope, right? Out of scope being, what do? I do B2B software. So some of them may be medical devices or biotech or things that or hardware, chips, things that we don't do. That's out of scope for us. Some of them may be out of stage for us. What do? We do first institutional rounds. The first priced round is what we do. So some of them may be angel dollars, i.e. you got to go get some angel dollars. You're too early for us. Some of them may be too late for us. They've raised $10 million already. They're trying to do a Series B, the next round. They're too late for us, right? So it's got to be, it's like the Goldilocks theory. It's got to be just right. Why does it have to be just right? Because the way we work the math. And I will come back to that. You had a question.
Yeah, what was the most money you ever lost on a company, and what did you learn from that experience?
The most money I ever lost on a company. So, interesting question. Good news is we have under 10% losses, which is really low. So I'll give you 2 examples, and in both cases, so here's the tricky part. In both cases, lost very little money, okay? So firstly, if you're not losing, you're not taking enough risk. The key is, just like in what I said to you guys, do you know when to get out? Do you know when to pivot? Do you know when to cut your losses? Do you know when to stop investing? Okay, that's hard. So the two deals that I've lost money on, one of them I lost $2.25 million on, and the other was actually about the same. And they were different reasons. The one deal that I lost money on was a deal I did down actually in San Diego that was with an incubator down there with a guy that's really interesting. He had a very interesting business model. What he was doing was he was going to Fortune 100s, so to folks like GE and Chevron and others, and saying, what's your biggest problem? And I will put a group of people together to solve those problems. And, you know, and we can discuss this if you guys want to, but one of the things that, of course, is very hot and very big is AI and machine learning and all of this other stuff, and analytics and algorithms. And of course, that was what was coming back from these companies. They were basically saying, we don't have the talent in-house. We need to solve these problems. We need folks outside of here to do it. And so what he was doing was he basically got a group of entrepreneurs. He said, each of you are going to take a piece of this problem. I'm going to find other investors to come in. We lost money on that deal, so we chose one. We lost money on it because ultimately it was the wrong entrepreneur. And we tried to get the CEO switched out, and we failed. And ultimately, this was a perfect example of where we knew early on that this wasn't going to work. It was a good idea, good technology. The go-to-market was never going to happen because of leadership. So we started backing off quickly, but we did lose about 2.25. The other one was a very different issue. This was a deal in Portland. It was an entrepreneur who is phenomenal. He had done 3 other companies. We had backed 2 of them. Smart, built a really great company that was basically looking at the long tail of search. This goes back about 7 years ago. It was going great, and Google made a switch in their analytics in terms of how they were basically pricing, and the algorithms of how they were basically pricing on search, and he got wiped out. And it happened in literally overnight. You know, so there you go. You know, coulda, shoulda, woulda. Could have gone a lot of different ways. But it literally happened within a quarter, but literally overnight. And we shut it down. We shut it down. We took the technology, by the way, and we got a little bit of the asset back by merging it with something else, but we basically shut it down. Other questions before we go further into the math?
Quick question.
Yeah.
So in the previous example, you said that you knew the leadership would be a problem.
Yep.
What exactly were the specific red flags?
He
that
didn't listen. It's a big one. He didn't listen. I mean, you know, he didn't listen. He didn't listen to us. He didn't listen to his team. He didn't listen to his customers. He didn't listen. He was smart. There was nothing not smart about this guy. He was likable, and we knew it within about 9 months. You know, I mean, I could over-explain it, but that's really where it came down to. Every conversation, I got off the phone with him, and I just wanted to scream. You know, there was a lot of, yeah, I got it, yep, I agree, yep, I got it, yep, absolutely, I'll do that. And he just knew it was total crap. It wasn't more complicated than that. It's all about the people. Yeah?
With that last example, you said that when they went out, you got some of their
Got some of the assets out.
Yeah, how does that typically work? Like if you invest in a company and it doesn't work out, do you typically control a lot?
We try, well, you could. You could control. So obviously, we try to get anything, you know, blood from a stone any way we can, right? In this case, there was some IP that was of value, and there were about 3 engineers that were really, really good. And there was another company in Portland that basically we found some synergies with. And so we didn't get cash, we got some equity in the other company. It was a Hail Mary, but, you know, what the hell? Had nothing to lose. Yeah?
How did you value that IP from that company?
Yeah. Stick your finger in the air and figure it out. I mean, in all honesty, in that case, it was truly a matter of just a negotiation. You know, I think we got a couple of $100,000 valued out of it. Yeah.
Hold up. Before we move on, if you're going to ask a question, can you please raise your hand really high?
Yeah.
Somebody will hand you a mic.
Yeah, go.
What were some of your best successes from a company? And
Yeah, let's
what
talk
were their
about the good
traits?
ones
Yeah,
that we made the
yeah.
money. So I'll mention 2. I mean, one of them I've already mentioned, that's Elemental. So I'll tell you the Elemental story. So did any of you know Elemental? Any of you knew Sam? Okay. So as I told you, when we first met Sam, he and his co-founders basically were going to solve this over-the-top digital media issue with a chip, with a bespoke chip. We said we don't do chips. He came back a year later and he said, we figured out how on an NVIDIA chip we can basically write software to solve the problem. That was revolutionary. There had never been bespoke software written on NVIDIA before. It had all been, the graphics interface had always been a locked box, and no one ever tried to actually write on top of that aspect of the chip, and they did. And it was revolutionary. And so that's when we put the first money in. The short story is that over the next 7 years, Sam and his team raised, actually this will be a good segue into the math. Sam and his team raised a little over $40 million over 4 rounds of investing, and ultimately sold the company for about $370 million to Amazon Web Services, and that was 2.5 years ago. The process of getting there was spectacular. Their first market, so anyone know, this is true for any of you looking at digital media, videos, anything in there. So what do you think that the hottest market for, it's always been the beachhead accounts for video? No. Porn. Porn sites. They spend a lot of money. What do you think the second largest is? You guys should know this. Sports. Went from porn to sports. Honestly, right? Really hysterical. But it's been this way for a long time. So they very quickly got into MLB. MLB, for any of you who have anything that may even be any random idea in software, MLB is one of the most technologically driven organizations in the world. Major League Baseball. It's crazy. They got into MLB, and from there ESPN and things like that, and NBC and ABC. So they got into all of the broadcasters very quickly, and then they went to the cloud. And it was a big bet on basically processing in the cloud when they did it. They were the first company in this space to move to the cloud, and the BBC was really interested in moving to the cloud. So the BBC was the first broadcaster in the world that said, we're going to basically put all the content in the cloud and distribute from there. And so there was a series of decisions made. There was a series of really ballsy roadmap decisions made based on really smart research that paid off. We introduced Sam to Andy Jassy, who heads up AWS. Anyone know how big AWS is? You all know how big Amazon is, right? Anyone know how big just the Amazon Web Services part of almost 50 billion. Microsoft's cloud business is almost 30 billion. That's how big this shit is. So we introduced the team, the Elemental team, to Andy really early on, long before AWS thought they were ever going to get into video or content. And they kept that relationship going because, again, this is all about go-to-market, building these partnerships, basically looking at the ecosystem, figuring out the long shot as to where is this company going to go, who are strategic to me, who's going to help accelerate my business. How do I get so I'm not just linearly growing, but I really get to that inflection point? And so there were some bets that were made on those partners, AWS being one of them. And ultimately, there was a bidding war for them. When they sold, they were just at $50 million of revenue. They were the first, and they were the leaders in cloud, putting the digital media up into the cloud. And there was a bidding war between AWS and Ericsson. And it was a great outcome. That really was almost a 10x. I'll give you, this isn't another of the biggest, but it's another example of a different type of great win. We were just talking about it before. I placed a bet on a company in Portland called Skyward. Any of you knew who they were. They were an operations management console for commercial drones. And this was 3 years ago. This is when commercial drones were still very much, sort of a dream to folks, that forget all the stuff in the parks with the dads and the kids. This was that truly, to Bezos' vision that you're going to deliver pizzas, online, and the pizza's going to drop them in your front yard, and right. I mean, but that is what's going to happen here. The concept of roadways in the sky is what's being worked on. By the way, the technology is totally there. And the team that I invested in was a young man named Jonathan Evans, who was a Black Hawk helicopter guy. He went to U of O Business School. While he was in business school, he basically came up with this idea that we're going to need commercial roadways in the sky to solve the problem, ultimately, of commercial drones. And oh, by the way, the UK, Australia, and Canada had already regulated for commercial drones. And he got a partner, a guy whose name was Marcos, who has now changed his name to X, legally. You have to love it. Love him. But X happened to have been, at that point, worked for every three-letter government organization you can think of. And they met when they were both doing some military work. And X, at the time, was sitting in Washington on all of the boards with NASA and Lockheed Martin and Google and you name it, trying to figure out the regulations for the roadways in the sky, for the commercial regulatory compliance of what happens when you put commercial drones in the sky. And they got together with this very big idea. And I loved it. Loved him, loved it. And so we wrote a small check. We wrote a $1.5 million check initially to just see, okay, is this the craziest thing you've ever heard, or is this going to work? And it turns out that we really did have an inside track. We really were at the table where the decisions were being made, and we really did know what the decisions were going to be. And we could really build a product and a roadmap that was going to meet when the regulations came out. And, we basically hit it right. So we went out and raised another round of funds. And with that, we brought in a new lead investor. When you bring in a new lead investor, it brings the valuation up to remember, it's all about the money. So with the next round, the valuation, when we put the money into Jonathan, we priced him at about what we call a $4 million pre-valuation. He had zero revenue. Right? So we priced the business at about $4 million. We raised a new round with a new lead. That got priced at about 12. That was about a little less than a year. And with that round, Verizon came in as an observer. They made a small investment, and they came in and they said, we're interested in this. So we said, sure, we'll take the strategic money. So Verizon came in, they took an observer board seat. And about 2 years later, so all of that was like the first 2.5 years, just short of a year ago, we were going to raise another round, that one was going to be about a $10 to $12 million round. And we had a new lead term sheet. And when none of this makes sense to you, you'll tell me, and we'll go through what I just said. And Verizon, about 72 hours before the term sheet was going to get signed, made a call and said, we've got a different idea. And they offered to buy them at 4x. And so in 2.5 years, we made 4x on the money. It wasn't the plan that Jonathan and his team originally had, but what this was going to basically do for them was give them a really big playing field. And they're loving it. It's working great. I don't know if he's loving the politics every day, but he's loving the money and the visibility and the ability to really affect a marketplace huge. So different, that was what we call one and done, basically. But it was an interesting play, and it was a great win. Yeah. See, we figured this out so quickly.
So I was wondering, how does the investment in deal side work from your end? You just said you value a company and then give them money?
The black art of valuation.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how does that work? And
Yeah.
then separate rounds?
Yeah. So let's talk about the math a little bit, because this will get to that question a bit. And I keep coming back to this issue of the math. So what's the largest expense for building a company? People. And there's one other thing. Rent. It's people and buildings, right? R&D is people, right? So it's people and buildings, really. I mean, you could say marketing dollars, but in all honesty, when you're first getting started, you're spending very little on marketing. I mean, you're going to a trade show and you're, whatever, but it's people and buildings, space. So the Pacific Northwest, I made a comment up front where I said what we can do for $1 to $3 million initially, right, is like amazing compared to the Bay Area. Let me tell you how amazing. What we can do for $1 to $3 million in the Pacific Northwest takes $8 to $10 million down in the Bay Area. Okay, that's at Seattle. What we can do for 1 to 3 in Portland, it's about a 20% uplift in Seattle. Not a lot, but a little bit. So what does that mean? That means that in order for the same 5 guys to basically build the same software in Santa Clara versus Portland or Seattle is going to take 3x the dollars. Now, you could argue, like with real estate, well, that's just the price of admission. But the problem is that at some point, the numbers never get better. Right? The numbers keep going higher and higher and higher. So if it took $8 to $10 million in California to basically take 5 guys and get the first version out, it's then going to take $25 to $35 million to basically get your first sales team, and it's going to take, so you ultimately, on the elemental example where I said we raised $40 million, in the Bay Area, that investment easily would have been $200 million. Now, what does that mean? I'm going to get to your valuation question. We're just going to work our way backwards. What does that mean? Ultimately, since I said this is all about the money, there are 2 ways at the end of this to make money. You guys know what the 2 ways are? Sell it or IPO. Okay, I'm oversimplifying because, but that's it. I mean, there are different ways to sell it, but it's sell it or IPO. So, if I have an Elemental Technologies and I am best in the market and I've only raised $40 million and I basically have a $50 million business, and oh, by the way, with Elemental, just to even make it sweeter, they still had about 20 million of that in the bank because they got break even really fast. Really unusual, though. So I then go and I get sold to AWS for $350 million. Everyone is really, really happy. And when we sold them to AWS for 300, it was 375, but keep it even. Basically, the valuation of that company had gone up with each round. And so that company was valued such that ultimately, when you did the math, it was an 8x win. Now, if they were in the Bay Area and they had raised, for that 40 million, they probably would have raised easily 250 to 300 million. How much would you have had to have sold that for to make 7x? Right? You'd have to sell it for close to $1 billion. How many companies out in the marketplace could buy a company for $1 billion? Your buyers get really small. The list of buyers get really, there are a lot of people who will pay $300 to $500 million for a company. There's even more people who will pay $100 to $200 million for a company. And if you've put a reasonable amount of money in, at the point where you sell it, everyone's happy because it's all about the money, right? So this issue of the valuation becomes part of the arithmetic, right? And it really is a black art. And I will say this as someone who didn't come into this from finance, who came into it from the operational side. The biggest thing I couldn't figure out is how the hell are you guys figuring out these valuations? Right? A little bit of the math, right? So you can figure out a post money pretty well, because if I valued you at 4 million and I put in 2 million, then the post is 6 million. But if you have, and that's at 0 revenue. But now, if I value you at 6 million, and now I raise 10 million, but you also have revenue of 3 million, then it's not going to be 6 plus 10, 16. Now there's a bit of a negotiation, because you got $3 million of revenue. So I think, the entrepreneur, thinks that I should get at least 30% or 50% more than that. And so you say, I think I should be a $20 million valuation. And I go, you know, I'm not so good on the $20 million valuation, and I'll tell you why. Because I want to make sure I own enough of your company. You want to make sure you own enough, I want to make sure I own enough. So it's, unfortunately, there's no, how does this work? It's a negotiation. So some of it's math, right? Some of it is the marketplace basically. In Portland, if I do a deal, I'm looking at a deal right now. It's very similar to what I just said. It's before revenue. They're just at revenue. They really, it's a good idea. It's a great idea. In fact, let me change that. There's a deal I did about 6 months ago called Stackery. It's serverless, so it's serverless cloud infrastructure. You guys know AWS Lambda? Okay, so what Nate came out of New Relic, what Nate basically is doing is an operations management console for serverless cloud infrastructure. If that means anything to any of you or not, it doesn't matter. It's software. Zero revenue, really smart team. Bottom line is, we said a $4 million pre. He was fine with that. He had nothing. He had shit. I mean, you know, so I mean, zero revenue. He had 5 people, right? So we said 4 million. He goes, great. It's, in Portland was the comp. He goes around, he talks to the other entrepreneurs. He said, what did you get? What valuation do you get? And they said, oh, we got 4, we got 5. Yeah, this all made sense, right? If he went to the Bay Area, they would have said, oh, we got 10, we got 12. In fact, I always know when I have an entrepreneur that's been in the Bay Area when they come talk to me, because they'll sit and say to me, I think I need $6 million, and I think that I should have a $10 to $12 million valuation, right? No problem. And I look at them and I go, so who are you talking to in the Bay Area? Because you ain't getting it in Portland. It's just not the comp. So there's a comp that's involved, right? With Nate, it was exactly the math I just said. With Nate, it was 4, just short of $2 million, post of about 6. Nate's out raising money right now for the next round. Now, when we do the next round, 90% of the time it'll come from money down from the Bay Area, right? I mean, that's where we're going to end up going, right? Now, it's to all of our advantage if the valuation goes up. We're happy, right? He's happy. But here's the piece of the math that you got to look at. When we make that first investment, we want to own 15 to 20% of the business. Nate obviously wants to own somewhere as close to 50 in the beginning, because everyone's just going to dilute down. There's no, I mean, we can go up by putting more in, but this sort of gets diluted down. So we want to own 15 to 20. Nate wants to own some percentage. When we do the next round, we want the valuation to go up so that our ownership, and we'll put our pro rata in, so that our ownership stays at that 15 to 20%. Nate's going to get diluted down a bit. So now he's going to start to negotiate just where does that number need to be so that he doesn't start to get diluted down. Now you start to get where the entrepreneurs and the investors are going to start to negotiate. And where the entrepreneur has strength in negotiation is when they're executing really well, right? So when I put the money into Nate, Nate says, I say, what are you going to do with that money, Nate? And Nate says, I'm going to hire my engineering team, I'm going to hire my first business person, and I'm going to get my first 5 pilots. We're going to release the V1, and I'm going to get my first 5 pilots. Seems reasonable. And he's going to do that in 12 to 18 months. Seems reasonable. There's patterns here, so I know that, because I do this every day. That seems reasonable. If Nate misses those milestones, right? By the way, no fault of his own. Might be that he was bad. But if Nate misses those milestones, just because it's hard, this is really hard, right? And then he has to go raise more money because he spent the money. It's going to be a lot harder for him to negotiate the valuation going up, right? Which means he's going to get diluted further down. So what I always advise is don't worry about the valuations in the beginning. Worry about getting the right amount of money and then exceed the milestone. Because then when you go ask for the next round of money and you start on this valuation game, you're going to sit and say, I met my milestones, right? Because what am I judging? I'm judging on how do you build a business. I don't care if your technology is good or not. If it's not good, this is all a wash. If the product doesn't work, it doesn't matter what I do. So I have to assume for a moment the product's going to keep going. The harder part is your ability to go to market. So now I'm in the Bay Area, and now, same numbers, right? I've now raised $20 million. I'm at the same exact place that Nate is right now, which is I've got 5 pilots. And now I've got to go out and raise another $20 million. Where do you think those valuations go, right? So the math becomes extremely critical as it relates to the negotiation. Everyone wants their ownership. Everybody wants to make sure that they're being treated correctly in where the numbers fall. It's a matter of you proving to me that basically it makes sense when we talk. There is no science to this. It is a black art. But it is very much predicated on your ability to execute on what you do. Any other questions on that? Okay, so where do you want to go from here? How much time do we have left?
We're just a little before 7, so we
Okay.
can go another 5.
So where do you want to go? Yeah. Does that make sense? I mean, it's truly sort of an art form. Yeah.
So with B2B companies,
Yeah.
you can often see, if it's not going well, high churn rates in the end.
Yeah.
What's an instance of you seeing a really high churn rate, and then what were the steps that you took to combat that?
Oh, God, it's almost like you know what my world is right now. So I have a company in Portland, although they were split between Portland and California, that's in the marketing automation space. You guys know what marketing automation is. So you know what Salesforce.com is. You know what sales automation is. It's the systems that the sales guys put all their leads in. Okay, marketing automation is what the marketing folks use to basically manage the whole marketing mix and names and site. Anyway, it's big market. The disruption, the reason that I invested in this company, and it's now been 6 years ago, was because in the market at the time were these big guys. And they were selling very expensive $100,000 systems to large enterprises. And this company said there is greenfield of small and medium-sized businesses where nobody is selling a product. Wide open market. So this is business disruption, not technology disruption. Wide open market. And we think we can sell it on the phone. We think that we can sell it in 42 days, just a cash register. Just over and over and over and over. And a really smart engineering group. Good technology. We totally put the money in, and the company grew to be $50 million. At about $35 million, which, by the way, a $50 million SaaS company is really good. At about $35 million, we started to see the churn go up. So everyone know what churn is? Churn is customers that churn off of their contracts, right? So if you basically had a really good quarter and sold $10 million worth of product, but you had $9 million of existing customers say, we don't want to pay anymore, and this is very much in a SaaS business because it's this sort of monthly roll, then you've only basically sold $1 million worth of product. So all that hard work that the sales guys have done to sell 10 is somehow getting lost on the other side. So at about $35 million, we started to notice the churn numbers start to go up. Now, how did we notice that? Because churn is a really, really important metric. And so when you're in a SaaS business, you will have your investors or your CEO or you're looking at churn. So when we started to see the churn number go up, you have to start to say why, right? Well, there's only really a few dials, right? So is it the product, right? Does the product suck? Does the competition is basically, have they decided how to compete against us better? Product's okay, but now all of a sudden we used to be under the radar screen, now we're not, and the competition is sort of hitting on us. Is it the sales force? Do they just not know how to sell this stuff? Is it the customer success folks? They're just not taking good care of their existing customers? Is it the pricing? Is it that the message doesn't resonate with the target market that we're going with? Yes, 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 yes. Can be any of those, can be all of those. But literally, you have to dissect the go-to-market to understand why is it churning. Now, how do you do that? Well, inside the company, you talk to your VP of sales and your VP of marketing and your VP of engineering, and they all have their analysis. But there's really only one way you can find out why something is churning. And what is that? Talk to the customer. The customer will always tell you what they think. So there was a lot of talking to the customer. Without going through all the hairy details, the net was we did figure out what the problem was. It's always a combination. It's never one thing. It was a combination. It was people and technology. We made some extensive people changes, and we made some extensive product changes. And we stopped the bleeding. Not enough yet. We're in the process of stopping the bleeding. The revenue is holding. The churn has slowed down. We think that we've reversed it, and we'll know in another couple of quarters.
Hi, Diane. My name is Falmata Saeed.
Hi, Paul.
Falmata Saeed. So first of all, I want to say thank you for coming and presenting to us. Definitely find value in your seasoned experience, and as a venture capitalist. You mentioned that the companies that you tend to invest in have to be disruptive in their industry, or specifically, in their industry, but as well as like their technology and whatnot. Being from Seattle, there's a different type of landscape, I feel like, for the type of technology that emerges, or the software there. For example, having Amazon here versus having like a Google or Facebook.
Yep.
So in terms of trends of disruptive companies or disruptive technologies or business models, what do you see being more popular in the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, it's a good question. So to start right where you left off, we are the cloud infrastructure epicenter of the universe, right? I mean, we've got AWS, we've got Microsoft. I don't know if you guys know it or not, but Google's now moved their cloud business up to Seattle, and IBM, actually through an acquisition they made of one of our portfolio companies called Blue Box, now has their cloud infrastructure up there. Why? Because the talent's up there, right? So we are the cloud epicenter literally of the universe. And as a result of that, one of the big trends, of course, up here is anything that's associated with cloud infrastructures. It's one of the reasons why I was so interested with Nate and Stackery, was because you're sitting between AWS and Microsoft, and then you're sitting between the two other very large DevOps companies, Puppet and Chef in Seattle, Puppet in Portland, that this whole thing, it's like it's all happening here, right? So cloud infrastructure, and whether that is DevOps or other applications around it, there's a whole list of things that could be. So that's one. Second is, and again, it's all part and parcel with some of the cloud stuff, but it's also part and parcel with where the technology is going. And again, there are lots of trends, that have nothing to do with what I do. There's consumer trends, there's biotech trends, but in my world, AI and ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning. The price of admission, it's happened very quickly. 3 years ago, we were making investments in companies that were just bunches of data scientists who were writing AI and ML algorithms and then trying to sell them. And the problem was, you can't just sell a raw piece of technology. It has to solve a problem. So then what happened was you found that all of these companies were looking for a problem. And most of them, the first place they went was customer success, was support services, and then some went into healthcare. So anyway, AI and ML is now sort of price of admission in almost any enterprise. solution vertically. So we're watching those technologies become almost embedded, but in terms of them being the differentiator, AI and ML are huge. In Oregon, in Portland, and some of this, it's a really interesting thing, but it's true everywhere. The whole IoT, Internet of Things, so that has to do with autonomous everything. That has to do with sensors everywhere. That has to do with smart buildings. That has to do with smart cars. Anywhere you can place a sensor, this is this whole IoT thing. So that's also changing, but there's a lot of really smart people in the Northwest in this whole, again, different verticals, but with the knowledge and background. And again, it has a lot to do also with the machine learning and AI that it takes to basically make these sensors, which are commodities, be smart. And then finally, we do happen to be a very large B2B versus B2C region. And so we have a lot of SaaS up here, software as a service. We have a lot of B2B across all industries. And while there is, obviously Seattle has a very large gaming market and there are these niche areas, we are a very large B2B region. Yeah? Anything else? I'm going to eat cookies after, so you can talk to me then too. Yeah, we got one more right here.
So my question is more towards the personality types of the industry.
Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of people that think they have a lot of great ideas.
Yeah.
And how they approach you. I guess, what is the general sense of respect and the mannerism that people carry themselves, and how does that kind of like come off in a business setting? Like you see a certain personality that's super respectable and you think, oh, they're really nice and that's really great. Or is there another personality type that's a little bit more aggressive and you think, well, I think we might be able to leverage that, or stuff like that?
Listen, it takes a lot of ego and it takes a lot of passion and it takes a lot of guts to build a company. So I'll be the last one to say that, if you don't have ego and you don't have some aggressiveness and you don't have some ability to take risk and have passion and be excited, that it's not going to work. But the best thing I can tell you is self-awareness. It's okay to be aggressive and have an ego and be passionate, but are you self-aware enough to know what you don't know? And so what I look for is, I've got CEOs that are analytics. They are constantly paranoid about the next thing that could go wrong. They're thoughtful. And then I've got folks like Jonathan Evans, who is like all over the place. He is like flying off the ceilings. He is like, he gets in the room and people are dancing on the tables, right? I mean, it's self-awareness, right? And why is it self-awareness? It's because if you're not, no one wants to work for you. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're a jerk, and if it's I can do it, I can solve it, I can make it, I know, I have all the answers, I can promise you ultimately no one's going to want to work for you. And it truly takes a team to build a great company. So leadership, and you make mistakes, right? I mean, all of you will have build companies and you'll hire people and you'll make mistakes hiring people and you'll fire people and you'll say, I'll never make that mistake again, and then you will. It's hard. People are hard. People are really hard. So that's why I said highly disruptive in large markets with great teams, the hardest part of that is the people. So the one point that I can basically say to answer your question is self-awareness. And what your personality is beyond that, what I always say to the guys that I invest in, and thank God, a couple of girls, is just be yourself. Don't be anything you're not. But what I'm looking for is self-awareness. So with that, guys, thank you. I appreciate the time.
So we have a gift to thank Diane for her visit. We have we have obviously about incredible hospitality business management program as part of our university. So Chef Jamie has authored a cookbook, and there's some treats
fabulous!
From our
hospitality.
Oh, good. From a hospitality program in there to say thank you. Let's give her one more round of applause. Thank her for coming.
Thank you.
So real quick, just you got to meet Allison at the beginning. She's a resource for you as you move through the business plan competition, as you prepare to have impact with your idea, even if you don't choose to participate in the business plan competition. Here, Dr. Howard Davis is also here from Voiland College of Engineering and Architecture, and he is a great resource for you on technical issues and business issues as well. Feel free to reach out to him during our networking time. I also wanted to thank our hospitality folks for the appetizers we're about to eat. And then I have one other quick announcement. So we just found out recently that we got funding from Boeing Employees Credit Union, from BECU, to sponsor a brand new prize at the business plan competition this year. And this is a good night to announce that, because the prize they want to fund is a financial technology prize. So they've put up $5,000 for the team that develops the best financial technology product or service. So if you weren't planning on being in the business plan competition, but you're a student interested in financial technology, then this is a great opportunity for you to jump into the competition and go after that prize. You know, for the merit prizes, we have 4 other merit prizes: best presentation, best written plan, best social responsibility venture, and let's see, what's the other one? Best social responsibility. Best technology, thank you. So those you don't have to even advance to the final round. So we'll take the top 24 teams, we'll present to our judges out of the screening round, and then we'll take the top 6 teams, so a team out of each league, that will present in the finals in the afternoon. But you can win the FinTech prize, you can win the Best Technology prize or the Best Social Responsibility prize, even if you don't advance to that final round. So it's really a great opportunity for young teams, for teams that have great ideas that maybe don't have quite the polish to jump in on some of those merit prizes. So I just really want to encourage you, tell your friends about it. It's another great opportunity to win some money and participate in the competition and learn a lot in terms of have a great undergraduate experience. So thanks everybody for coming. I'm delighted with the turnout tonight. You know, I'm really happy you all came. Got to hear an incredible speaker with Diane and enjoy some hospitality appetizers. Be sure you network with each other, because that's how you build a great team. Our most successful student entrepreneurship company that's trying to raise some money right now has a couple of people on that team that they got to know each other here as undergrads at WSU. So, yeah. Oh, if you didn't have a chance to sign in, there's a paper sign in, and there's also, Tyra will also have, are we just going to do it all on paper? Okay. Tyra has a paper sign in sheet that you can go ahead and fill out, and then we'll transcribe that into the Excel spreadsheet after that. So that's it. All right, great. Thanks for coming.